Sally Porteous is the founder of Red Lanyard and also of the Events Workshop. She knows everything about events, and as female business owners, we need to know a lot about events, so it's going to help us grow our business. Welcome to the Women on the Rise podcast. I'm Jen Blandos, the founder of Female Fusion, and this is where we look at everything entrepreneurship for female entrepreneurs. Whether you are just getting started or you have a 7 or 8 figure business, we cover the topics that matter most to you as you are building, growing, and scaling your business. Welcome to the podcast, Sally.
Thank you, Jen. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I'm really honoured. Thank you.
Well, it's so great to be here on Australia for Female Fusion, and I am so excited to hear all about events from you because events are such a big thing for female entrepreneurs. I would love to know, before we dive into that, what made you get into the world of event organisation?
The exciting thing about that is you don't realise you're in it until eventually you do something that other people find really hard and you found it really easily and you go, oh, this is a thing. And I think as female entrepreneurs, a lot of us have been doing what we've been doing forever and we haven't really named it. And that's kind of my journey. I've been doing events since I started work, but I didn't know that's what I was doing, because I didn't learn that at school. I didn't learn this as a profession. So I've been in the music industry, I've been in the real estate industry, I've been in public transport, I've been in every construction industry for a long time. In every place that I've worked, if I reflect back, I have been the event organizer in every place that I've worked.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Because it is, now in university you can do degrees on event organization, which goes to show how important it is as a practice.
Yeah.
But back then, same thing, my initial field of work was PR and communications.
Yeah.
There are no degrees for that. I have a degree in politics.
Yes. Yeah.
So for female entrepreneurs, organizing events can be quite an important thing to have in their business. But I think sometimes, you don't know what you don't know. What do you find are the biggest challenges that people come up against when they're organizing events?
Confidence is one thing, that people think they're not capable, or they think they don't know enough, or they think, well, I can only stand on other people's stages. I couldn't possibly create my own event, because they have a vision of what they've seen before or what they've been to before, which is commonly a large event, a large conference, someone highly confident on stage with a big audience in front of them. You don't need to start there. You need to start at the beginning.
So what would work well for a first event then?
Yeah. What's comfortable for you? And this is what I love. If you think about the audience and what it is you want to share with that audience, if you start there, who it is that you want to serve and why you want to serve them and what you want to share with them. I have this lovely little framework that it's a little 4-part framework that you can answer a few questions that will help you decide. Well, first of all, it helps you define who it is that you want to serve and what you want to serve them with. But then you start to think about, well, what environment does that look like? And I often talk about, it's not about the number of people in the room, but the quality of the people in the room. So don't try and fill the room. Don't pick a venue and try and fill it and then work backwards from there. You don't want to do that.
It's such a common thing though, isn't it?
It is.
And I see this as well in Female Fusion with some of our members, that they'll look and go, where's the best venue? How can I get the best gifts? And not think about that end result first and work backwards.
How do you want to feel?
Yeah.
And how do you want your guests to feel? That's the number one, start there. And if you keep that in your heart, in your mind the whole way through, you can't go wrong. Yeah. You really can't go wrong. So the size of what you're doing can be 10 people, can be 5 people, can be 2 people. An event is a gathering of people.
Do you know, when you were saying this, it made me think of my very first business and how I grew my very first business. I went to Prague in the Czech Republic. So my business was in London.
Yeah.
And at that time, there were a number of countries within the who were joining the European Union. And I did communications and PR training. And I was like, why don't I organize a conference there and call it Communicating in the New EU? I had we were like, we've got this captive audience. And I went to Prague and we ended up getting 70 people to turn up for that conference. And that's actually one of the pivotal moments in my first business that helped me really grow it. And I was like, oh, that's an event. Like the event actually is one of the things that really helped build and grow my business.
But I can bet too that the success of that was because you looked at it from what does this audience need to know?
Oh, yes.
And often what happens is people don't start there. They start with the venue and the date, and then they get nervous about themselves.
Yes. The event was last minute.
Yeah.
The event was like, we thought all about the content and the outcomes. And I remember that it was very much, right, where can we find a hotel in Prague?
Yeah.
But it was like, it just goes to show the power, if you get that right, how that can work so well for your business.
Oh, absolutely. And what I'm finding now, and this has sort of just started to bubble up now, is you can't fake yourself in a live event, right? So anyone who's worried about AI or worried about whether, that is this real, this thing that I'm participating in, that can't be faked in a live event.
Yeah.
So
when you see business owners, maybe they start out with their first event, what are some of the common mistakes that you would see people make? So if somebody's listening to this and going, okay, I think I'm going to try this, what things should they be looking out for not to do?
Yeah. Well, don't pick the venue first and don't pick the date first. You can think about those things because that is often what drives us. We think, oh, I want this beautiful space and this is the time that's right for my market. But some of the mistakes people make, I guess, when they make those choices is when you're picking a venue, remember you're picking real estate and you are going to spend money on this real estate. Now, you wouldn't buy a house sight unseen, no conversation from a website.
But people do it.
They do it.
They do it.
I know they do it.
Yeah.
But if you're going to invest in booking a venue, it's not difficult to, even if you can't get there, if it's in another country or another place, you can get in touch with them and just ask them to walk around with their phone.
Yeah. Even if you have that virtual tour to get a sense of things.
But not even their virtual tour on their website because they will always show you the
you'll
best
see the good
parts.
stuff. You're like, I want to see the corner over there.
So don't be afraid to ring them and speak to the business development manager and say, look, I just really want you to walk through the room for me so I can get a feel for what this space is like. For me, events is all about how you feel and how your audience feels. Otherwise, we could just all be on TV.
Yeah.
Like we don't need to be face to face. The second thing that people often forget about is what else is happening on the date that you want to do it for your audience.
Yeah.
So not even just major events and that kind of thing. Look at who it is that you want to attract to your event and make sure you're not competing against another conference, for example, or if mums are your audience or parents are your audience, is it school holidays? Should it be morning? Should it be nighttime? Is there some global event going on that you need to be aware of? So there's two ways to look at that. One is making sure you avoid some of those times. But the thing a lot of people don't think about is leveraging off them as well. So if you've got say you're in education and the major education conference for your region is on this particular weekend, and you're in the education sector, but not quite what's happening in that conference, put a side event on.
Yeah.
Put a little fringe event on because you've already got a huge market in your region. So that's a couple of things that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Those are so important when you think about that. And sometimes when I see events and you're like, oh, there's that major trade show going on, or the similar event that you're just not going to get the traction, or school holidays also as well, are not a good thing sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
One of the things that I think a lot of people worry about is that they don't want their event to be just another event and to be kind of boring. Have you got examples of business events maybe that small business owners have put on that have maybe stood out that are, because I think, there's no idea that's a new idea. It's always, why reinvent the wheel if it's been done?
Yeah.
Do you have suggestions for ones that you've either organized or attended that have just knocked it out of the park?
Yes, I have. And it doesn't have to be about the whole event. So I guess what I want to get across the line to people is it's the tiniest little things that can make the biggest impact. So the experience we've had here today is the members having a different lanyard to the non-members in our catch-up that we've had today, which makes the members feel really special.
Yeah.
An easy way to do it is with your name tags. So I had a wonderful experience doing the World Surf League conference, and their name tags are little balsa wood surfboards.
Oh, cute.
Now, this happens around the world. So when you attend this conference, they're collector's items.
Yeah.
Now, they're not cheap, obviously, but they're not super expensive either. But what that means is the person who comes to the conference time and time again, they want to collect that name tag at each place. You can do the same thing with delegate bags. So I've done another conference that every year the Indigenous print on the delegate bag was different. And so when people are coming time and time again, they're collecting them, but they also don't want to miss out because they like, oh, if I don't go this year, I won't get part of my collection.
Ah,
right? So
very good.
Super simple things that you can do there. But yes, the lanyards, the gift boxes, the experience people have.
Yeah.
Don't be running around fixing your AV and all that kind of thing when people arrive. The pre-journey, the post-journey. If you just look at every single step of the way from your audience's experience, you will make a difference. No end. Absolutely. You can't automate it. Don't try and automate it.
Yeah.
This is in real life stuff. And it's not difficult right now to make an impact by simply showing up and being in person for your guest.
And I always find too that I look at that and go, if I went to that event, if I was paying for that event, what would I want from it?
Yeah.
What would make it that is one of those ones that I absolutely have to go to?
And it's the easiest thing, like the host greeting me when I walk in the door.
Right?
Not walking in the door going,
yeah,
what do I do here?
Yeah.
You want to immerse people. You want people to, as soon as they arrive, they've forgotten where they're meant to be or family or work or any of those kind of things because you've just brought them into some magical environment.
Yeah. But people don't do that. They don't do that for a lot of events. Like I hear from people who come to Female Fusion events, they're like, oh, I went to another networking event to go and check it out and see what it's like compared to yours. They're like, it doesn't compare to yours. They're like, it's so nice. I come, you greet me, you've got my name badge, we have raffle prizes. I always, get to meet people and it's really relaxed. Food, I find, is another big thing. And so many events I've been to, and especially for me, like, look, everybody knows I'm the gluten-free vegan. You can't, not just gluten-free, not just vegan, gluten-free, vegan together. That's hard. And a lot of people don't think about that, but they know that they come to a Female Fusion event, they never have to worry about food. That we meticulously look at that and make sure that it's healthy, that it tastes good, that it doesn't matter what food allergy you have, you will always have something to eat. Yes. But then I'll go to other people's events and it's always like deep fried and pastry and there's nothing gluten-free and there's nothing vegan. And it just, I don't know, I feel like a little bit let down, to be honest.
Because they've chosen the menu based on what they want to eat.
Right.
Not what, they don't look at the audience. And a great example of this recently is I did a gala. And the menu was chosen, so I didn't choose the menu. Somebody else chose the menu.
Sally had no say.
No, I did not. And interestingly, through the process of people registering to attend, there was a large portion of people who were allergic to seafood. And I kind of just noted as we were going through it, like, this is really unusual to have such, like 15% of the audience was allergic to seafood, not just I don't want to eat it.
Yeah.
They were allergic to it. The entree was full seafood.
Ugh. And they didn't have like vegetarian or vegan option?
They do, but you don't want to have to ask for that. You don't want to be the only, I'm sure you don't want to be the only person at the table with the different meal.
I always am.
To everybody. I know you are. But I looked at that and thought, why aren't we changing this menu? Exactly. As these registrations are coming in and we're noticing, gee, this is really interesting. We've got time. We can go back to the venue and go, look, I think we need to change our entree because to me it's risky too.
Of course it is.
Hugely risky.
But I think it's sometimes you don't know if you don't know. Like, for example, for us, the reason why the food is so good is because I am so aware, because I face that all the time.
Yes.
So my view is, I don't want you to ever turn up to one of our events and not have something to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's like one of the things that we think about. But then I go to so many events and they don't even ask about food allergies. It's like, oh, if you have a food allergy, you're difficult. You can go get your own food.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. It happens a lot.
Yeah.
But when you don't have food allergies, you don't realize that. I went to a big conference in London earlier this year. No changes for food allergies. If you couldn't eat what was on the menu, the restaurant's out there.
Before you come. Wow.
Right. So I think little things like that make a big difference.
Yes. And if you do it early, you can change your menu.
Course.
So don't think that just because you've told the venue, here's my selection, that you can't change that.
Yeah.
You can change that probably 14 days beforehand.
Yeah.
Later than that, it gets a bit more difficult because they will have ordered and prepped and all the rest of it. But up until then, it's not difficult.
And then what about when you have a business event, how important is networking and building that in? Do you need to have considerations for that?
Yes, absolutely. People, so yes and no. So yes, you need to have it in there, but in your programming, something that I've done a bit of market research in this, and there's a lot more introverts in the world than possibly were, but there's a lot more people who want to get out and about. And so in my processes, what I've worked out is that people, they like the networking, but they like to have some sort of activity, a presentation or something in between, so they can have a break for a minute, so they can stop talking to people. So you've got to try and service all of the personality types in the room, right? So you've got a bunch of introverts, you've got a bunch of extroverts, and you've got people that just kind of want to hide in the background. Yeah. So I've found, the perfect model is networking, some kind of presentation, and then some networking again. And so the beginning allows for the extroverts to come in and go, oh, hey, I'm here. That's me. I'm chatting to everyone, kissing everyone. But then the introverts need a break from that.
Of course they do.
And they want to just sit down and just listen for a minute. They don't want to have to participate. They just want to hear someone talk. But then it gives them a great opportunity afterwards to have something to talk about. So the really shy people in the room who are scared to death.
Then you can be like, oh, hey, what did you think of that presentation?
Yes. Yeah. So when you're thinking about your programming, think about, the top 4 personality types, I guess, and make sure that you have built some period of time in your event to accommodate and allow for them to have the same experience as everyone else.
And how long do you give people for networking? Like, what's the ideal amount of time for a break?
45 minutes.
45 minutes.
Or less.
Okay.
Yes.
So 20, 30 minutes, does that work as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed.
One thing I have people say to me sometimes is that they, especially the really shy or the introverted people, that they're like, I wanted you to facilitate a way to make it easier for me to network. Have you come up with like any things that you can do that? Because I've been asked sometimes like, oh, could you do speed networking? And I always kind of feel speed networking is a little bit awkward.
Yes. That doesn't serve everyone in the room.
Right.
So if you can do it, and it depends on the size of your event and how well you know your audience.
Yeah.
And you can get to know your audience really well. My favorite events, and I do this myself, is I take time to look at who's coming. Who are they? I might go look at them on LinkedIn. I might pick a few people out and I get to know who they are, what they do. And then when they arrive, and I love this because it's happened to me only with one other event organizer in the past, I will introduce you to people.
Yeah.
When you arrive, I'll be like, oh, Jen, you really need to meet this person. And I will take you and I will personally introduce you.
It's so important, right?
Yeah.
Especially like if it's somebody who is quite shy or who hasn't met people before.
Yes.
And I talked to the team about that for our events, that's kind of part of the whole process, that if I'm not available because there's only so much of Jen that can go around, that, you know, there's
They
3
have to
other
do it.
people that I want you, that person's new, they've never come before, go and find our most extroverted, connected member and connect them up.
Yes.
Because then that member will be the one who'll be like, oh, let me introduce you to this person and that person. Oh, your business does that. You need to meet that person.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you're like,
Yes.
that's okay.
Think about the buddy system at school.
Yeah.
You know, look at your audience. They're your primary school kids. They're the new kids at the school. They need just one person. You don't need to introduce them to heaps of people, but you do need to help them come into the room. Because a lot of people are very scared of networking.
And then sometimes people as well will turn around and walk out if they feel really uncomfortable, that it's just not their thing.
Yeah, if no one's made eye contact with them, and being an extrovert, I look for those people in the room. I will scan the room and go, oh, they're still standing by themselves. I'll go and find them and take them to talk to someone, because no one wants to feel like that.
Of course.
No, and for most people, even I think if I find it hard to walk up to a group of people and break in and say, hi, how you going? Do you mind if I join you? If that's not your jam, it'd be terrifying.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrifying.
Now, what about, so kind of looking slightly differently to that one challenge I think people have as well is, I've got my event, I'm doing it, but how do I keep engagement going? Like, you've got the networking, but what other things can you do? Because I've been to events where sometimes they'll be like, get up, move around, dance. And people are like, oh, that's super awkward. I don't want to dance. What other, so from your professional opinion, give me some suggestions. If you don't want to do the awkward dancing, what other things can you do to kind of have a bit more engagement going?
Yeah. Bring other things into it. So one great event that I've been to was a business expo, but if you'd kind of done the expo part, they had a giant Lego building exercise going in the middle. So every booth that you visited, you got a piece of Lego, and then you could go and put your piece of Lego into something. So you're kind of doing something that's by yourself, but you can talk to other people about it if you like as well.
Okay.
The other things you can do is have things for people to look at. So beautiful artworks or even digital artworks, that kind of thing. It doesn't have to have any sound, but it's something for people to do who don't want to talk to anyone else, but they don't want to stand there, by themselves either, like, just holding a glass of wine or what have you. So giving people something to look at or something to participate in can be a way to do that. But let me share with you, I had a really interesting feedback from one of the questions I ask in some workshops that I do is, how do you feel when someone asks you to get up and dance? I've been at something where someone's asked me to sing as a whole group, and I'm like, that just terrifies me.
No, thank you.
Exactly. So I asked this question about, well, how do you feel about that? And someone actually said, I hate it when I'm asked to put my hand up.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, tell me more about that. And they said, well, I don't want people to know my opinion on that. So if I keep my hand down, I'm making an opinion. If I put my hand up, I'm making an opinion. So be really conscious, I suppose, of people don't want to out themselves in situations. So keeping people engaged, I guess back to your original question, it's okay if people are just sitting on the couch talking. Engagement doesn't mean dancing around a room.
Yeah.
Know your audience well. And if you're in the room, just ask people, how are you feeling about our event today? Are you having a good time?
Yeah.
And you will know from how they answer, how quickly they answer, and their body language, whether it's for them. Because I know myself, in situations where games have been played, I can be in the best conversation with someone, and then all of a sudden someone's yelling at me from a microphone. Yeah. Okay, now everybody with red dots. I want you to go talk to everybody else with red dots.
Yeah, it just
and I'm like,
inauthentic.
I was just having a great chat. I really don't want to stop this chat.
Yeah.
So get good at reading the room. Get good at reading the room, reading people.
You will never have red dot, blue dot in female fusion. I don't even think you would have like yoga in your chair or any of these things, because I know like you have so many different characters, right?
Yeah.
That you want to make sure that everybody goes in and they feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I've been learning a lot of as well is that different size events for different people, because some people, like the extrovert in me, we have some events where there's like 150, 200 people in the room.
Yeah.
Our extroverts are like, this is the best thing in the world. It is so cool. And then like they will tell me that is the highlight of their week or the month best event. And then you talk to the extrovert and they were like, what sweet, sweet hell have you brought me into? Like, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Because they're like, it's so many people. I don't know who to talk to. I would rather be somewhere with 20 people. And so that's where you were saying like the quality could be 20 people, a 20-person event can be just as impactful as the 200-person event.
Exactly. And again, it comes down to your audience, knowing your audience well. And hopefully you have, created something for an audience that you do know well.
Yeah.
You may not personally know them. Like if it's a public ticketed event, you don't necessarily know that person intimately.
Yeah.
But you kind of know their personality type, what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, where they hang out, that kind of thing. So if you're building it for your audience first and foremost, you'll get it right.
Good point. Now, I have a question for you. I always love asking this of people who are in events, because you're like a swan, right? That you look so beautiful. All event organizers are like this, that you look so beautiful and calm on the outside, but underneath your feet are going like this, because there is a lot of crazy stuff that happens with events, especially like bigger events, but even smaller events as well. Sometimes stuff happens, like you have an event cancel or a venue cancel on you last minute. Or I had like 3 hours before we had a massive event. One of the speakers just pulled out and she just WhatsApped me and was like, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm busy now.
Oh,
and I was like,
wow.
And she's like, maybe I can speak at one of your events next month. I was like, never again will you ever speak at one of our events. And in the end, like, you always make stuff happen, but there are things like the speaker pulls out. Even at the Female Fusion event we had today, the AV didn't work. And I just said to Mel, I'm like, look, I'm just gonna stand up. I don't need a screen. I'll just speak and, I'll riff and it'll be fine. But things like that happen. What would be your advice? Because I think that's also a fear that people have that's even preventing them. Like, I don't want to do this event because maybe my speaker is going to pull out.
Yes. So I often say to people who ask me what makes a great event manager is resourcefulness and resilience. Those two things. Everything else can be taught. Resourcefulness means simply that you can figure out how to solve a problem. Sometimes problems can't be solved though, and you just have to move on. You're not saving lives. As you said, your AV doesn't work. It's you they've come to see. So just remember that. It's you invited them. They bought the ticket from you.
Correct.
And they want to hear you talk. Yeah. So if everything else falls apart, you standing in front of your audience is all that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Because that's who they've come to see. I see people often, if the AV doesn't work, they spend an enormous amount of time trying to fix it. They're not engaging with their audience. Their audience have paid a ticket price or even taken time out of their day. Even if they haven't paid, they've still paid in time and energy to come, and they're just watching you muck around with AV. So just let it go.
Do you know the thing that happens to me? 25% of the time, I would say 1 event out of 4. Microphone doesn't work.
Yes.
No matter how many times you test it, the microphone doesn't work.
Yes, indeed. That's probably one thing I would suggest that someone does try to fix, only because I see in a lot of events, and it happened the other night actually, I was at a networking event. The person who was about to speak was handed a microphone and they said, no, it's fine, I've got a loud voice.
Oh, no.
Number one, I don't want to hear you shout at me.
Yeah.
You can't present well without a microphone.
Yeah.
So if that does happen, move closer to your audience.
Yeah.
If you're on stage and your audience is over there and your microphone stops working, come down the stairs.
Walk in between.
Walk through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't shout at people from stage.
I know.
That's horrible.
But I find as well that it impacts your breathing. It makes it difficult to project, even no matter how loud your voice is. Do you know what I did? I bought a portable Bose speaker with 2 wireless microphones.
Yes.
And for most events, we
That's
always
enough.
have it. It's always like, even though, because so many times I've had, no, we have AB, it's all perfect. And then you turn up and it's not perfect. So it's much easier if you have that portable speaker with you.
It is. And don't make your audience tell you they're deaf.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have great hearing. I don't, like you experienced today, I don't have great hearing.
Yeah.
So when you say I've got a loud voice, well, mine be loud enough for me. So I've either got to move to the front of the room, or I've got to strain to hear you, or I've got to watch your lips really closely and carefully. I don't want that. I want to be immersed in what you're saying. You've totally lost the impact.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into your story if I'm spending the whole time worrying about whether I can hear you or I understood what you said.
Make it easy.
Yes. And I actually call people out at events normally.
Yeah.
If I'm at an event publicly, I will, and someone goes and an audience member wants to ask a question.
Yeah.
And if they're handed a microphone, they say, no, thank you. I'll actually put my hand up and say, excuse me, I'm sorry.
I'd
appreciate if you use a microphone, please, because there's people in the room that may not be able to hear or be hearing impaired.
Yeah.
They don't wear a T-shirt that says I'm hearing impaired.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And I mean, the disability conversation is a whole other piece as well. And that's so important.
It's just caring,
for events, right?
But it's caring about your audience.
Yeah.
It's that simple. It doesn't have to be a complicated policy system process.
But it's being aware, right?
Yes.
And I guess, it goes back to me having food allergies that I have a lot of friends with disabilities. I also, one of my kids has autism as well. And so also being aware and thinking things like, is your venue accessible by a wheelchair?
Mm-hmm.
Or if somebody has a broken foot or they're on crutches, like, do they have to go up crazy stairs or is it safe?
Yeah.
And because nobody wants to feel excluded or left out because they have to have somebody carry them to help get up somewhere that doesn't feel good.
No, exactly. And they may not want to say what it is.
Of course.
They may have a temporary issue.
Yeah.
That,
like me, who has a broken foot right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to talk to you about one other subject related to business, but separate from event organization. And you're a member of Female Fusion. We love having you in Female Fusion.
I love being there.
But you're in a couple of other communities as well. Sometimes I hear from people, they'll say to me, they'll be like, oh, well, I'm only going to be in Female Fusion or I'm only going to be in this group. How does it benefit you being in a few different communities?
Yeah. I hear this a lot. I hear a lot of the times people say, I'm not going to get another course or I'm not going to get another membership because I'm already in this one, already in that one. I coined a bit of a term for myself when this started to rise a little bit in me, that I'd curated my own 21st century MBA. And I looked at what I'd joined and went, well, I've got finance, I've got marketing, I've got administration, I've got legal and compliance. And I thought, wow, this is an MBA which is current. Yeah. It's right now. If I went and did an MBA now, that information is so old.
Right?
Yes. And part of those educations is the cohort, right? Part of the reason you do an education is because you get the community, which today we sort of see as an online community, but it's learning by osmosis. And so the reason I'm in various different ones is because I'm in one that is where I am right now, which gives me actionable tasks for my business where it is right at this moment. Another one I'm in is gives me skills, knowledge, and a cohort of people where I can see myself going. I know I'll be there in a couple of years, and that's helping me on that little pathway. And then, of course, I'm in Female Fusion because this is where I see my business ultimately. The global connections, understanding what it's like to do business in a global environment. And what's really funny about that is it's a story for another time, but I ended up in an MBA program, not qualified to be in an MBA program. I did a lot to get there, and I didn't realise that I did a lot to get there. But I exited out at international business, and I was a mature age student, so this is in the last 15 years. But I exited out at when we got to the unit for international business because I thought, I'm never going to do international business ever.
Wow.
I'm not going to bother with that. And now I'm like, oh my goodness. But
this is where the opportunities are.
Yes. Right? Yeah.
And I've thought about that because international is my thing. That's kind of, I got rejected for being not local and was like, okay, well, I'll use the international. But I've realized, and I reflect back on my career and entrepreneurship experience, and it's because of the international that opened up so many opportunities.
But it's hard, right? It's hard to know without...
It can be scary. It can be like, especially if you haven't done it before, it can feel very scary and overwhelming.
Yes.
And for me, like as a business owner, one of my first like big countries that I went to outside of Europe, because I was already doing a lot in Europe, I went to Saudi Arabia. And this was Saudi Arabia 20 years ago.
Wow.
Saudi Arabia 20 years ago, when I went there, women were not allowed in government buildings. And I remember I had a meeting with the government minister, and we had to get special permission for me to be allowed into the building. And then we were leaving that building, and I had to go to the toilet.
Yeah.
And there were no toilets for women. And so I actually had to use the minister's private bathroom because women weren't allowed in. And I thought, like, it just blows my mind thinking that, you know, young Jen went and did these things and had these experiences. Of course, like Saudi Arabia is amazing. Like it's transformed. You wouldn't even imagine that it was like that 20 years ago. But I was kind of like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And it does take a bit of bravery because I think for some people, they would have experienced that and been like, not for me.
Yeah.
But if you do have a bit of bravery and you are willing to get on a plane and go experience a different market, it opens up huge opportunities.
It does. And the beauty, though, of Female Fusion, and I'm not just banging on for the sake of it, understanding the cultural differences.
Yes.
Having a space where I can go, hey, I'm thinking about doing this.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Is that acceptable? Should I be doing it in a different way? And having such a broad range of people in there who can say, here's how you need to do it here. If you're going to come to the UK, this is the approach you need to take.
Yeah.
If you're going to take that into, you know, Abu Dhabi, this is the approach that you need to take. And I feel much more confident now to develop the business to go international.
And it's cool, right? Because you realize you're like, they're just like me.
Yes.
They're just like me. Okay, maybe this works a bit differently or culturally this is what they like. But at the end of the day, we're all women. We're all building businesses. We all want profitable businesses.
Yes.
And there's so much that you have in common with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's excellent. I love it.
Thank you. So what is next for you? You're working on a few things. You've got some plans to go big?
I do. Yes, I do. So we have the Event Planners Workshop, which has the program and the tools to show you how to produce a successful event. So with that, you get me essentially holding your hand and making sure that you get the people in the room that you want in the room and you don't forget anything. And it's kind of just a little confidence boost, I guess, to be able to know that you've sort of got someone in your back pocket who can help you along the way.
I don't think I know of anybody who does that. And like, I can just think right now of so many people who would need that because people are scared.
Yes.
doing events. Like
Yes.
it's easy, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
Especially if you've never done it before. And like to have that with you. Wow. How many, like how long do they have you for doing that? Is it?
It depends on the type of event and their desire, I guess. So we have a 1 day and 2 day workshops. So if it's something small and not very complex and somebody just wants to get the plan down and get done, we can do that in a day, or we can do it in a weekend. There's an 8-week course as well, which gives you all the templates for you to go along with and produce your event, including all the marketing and design and all of that stuff as well. So it's not just the logistics.
So it's like an event in a box in a way.
Yeah, essentially. So it's design, administration, marketing, risk and compliance, and execution. So it's from beginning to end. It's idea generation to debrief, because I'll make you do a debrief.
Yeah.
So it's a 5-part system.
Amazing.
I guess is what we go through together. And then there's a 6-month coaching program as well. So if you want to do something that's a bit more complex, a bit more multifaceted, perhaps you've got, a series of speakers you want to bring together, or it's multi-day, higher risk, more investment, then that's a 6-month
So how do people find out about that?
Eventplannersworkshop.com.au is where you will find all the details.
That's cool. Now, one question I had for you before we end as well, that you mentioned, you were talking about how you have a process that's quite important for people to follow in their event. Do you have like a blog post or anything where people can read more about that?
I do. I have a lovely free download that they can use that comes with a video that I go through with you, how to go through this process, and it's a great little feasibility type framework. So you will know whether your event has legs or is an idea worth pursuing, or it's something that you need to go back to the drawing board on.
So how do we find that?
That is eventplannersworkshop.com.au/idea to launch.
Okay, amazing. And so we'll put that in the show notes, or if there are no show notes, depending upon where you're listening to it, you can find it on the website.
Thank you, Jen.
Sally, thank you so much for joining us, and I appreciate you taking the time to share your wisdom around everything events.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining me for this week's episode of the podcast. Now, if you are thinking that maybe your personal brand could be a little bit shinier, I've put together just the resources for you. Female Fusion's personal branding toolkit goes into everything that you need to secure speaking opportunities on podcasts, speaking opportunities at events or conferences, and to be able to nail the very best personal branding photographs. It's all together in one handy pack with mini trainings and Canva templates. I've included the link in the show notes, and all you need to do is hop over there and grab it.